So, now that there are only two people in the race, technically there's three. There's Bernie, Joe Biden, and Tulsi Gabbard, but essentially there are only two primary contenders. All right, two real people that have a chance at winning the Democratic nomination. Now that there's only two people in the race, essentially, those two people are Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, right? Well, I find it especially important now, seeing the Super Tuesday results, the Joe Mentum, as it's been coined. We need to tell the Democratic Party what it's getting into if Joe Biden is the nominee of the Democratic Party. I take no pleasure in saying this, but Joe Biden is not all there. Joe Biden is clearly experiencing cognitive decline. If you go back to 2016, you can see Joe Biden was pretty sharp. He was a great debater, right? Go back to 2012, watch him, debating Sarah Palin and whatnot. He was amazing. He destroyed Sarah Palin. Now, juxtaposition that Joe Biden to today's Joe Biden, and you can clearly see there's some decline happening. So, do you think somebody with dementia is going to beat Donald Trump in the general election? Joe Biden has trouble putting together a sentence. Now, I will stress that as of right now, Joe Biden is not completely gone, but by the time, by about a year after being in office, if he were to get elected, he'd be basically completely gone. He wouldn't know who he was anymore. Because you can see it's gotten worse and worse. Just the other day after Super Tuesday, where he did very well, he was, giving a speech, a victory speech, and his wife and his sister were both there, and he got them mixed up. He got he called his sister his wife, and it's just sad to see. It's genuine. I can't help but feel bad for Joe Biden, if you want the truth, because it's just so pitiful to see. And this is not nearly this is not like a one-time thing. On his New Hampshire campaign trail, they asked him like how are you liking it or whatever, New Hampshire, and he thought he was in Vermont. He was talking about how wonderful Vermont is, and now I understand, of course, in that scenario you are traveling a lot, you might get mixed up. So that's just like something a little bit extra. But there was another thing where Joe Biden thought he was running for Senate, not president. He forgot he was running for president, thought he was running for Senate. There was another thing where Joe Biden was talking about making the Paris Climate Agreement with somebody who's been dead for 23 years. All right, so clearly he is declining cognitively, and you can see in the debates. He starts off better in the day, and then he gets worse at night. And what is that? That's sundowners. Sundowners is basically when dementia gets worse at night, and you can clearly see that in Joe Biden. Do you think Joe Biden's going to beat Donald Trump in a general election? First of all, Joe Biden has a pretty bad record. A similar record to Hillary Clinton, all right? So he has a pretty bad record. On top of having a bad record, he has dementia. You think Donald Trump's going to refrain from from attacking him on that? No. And honestly, there's a debate to be had about which is worse. Re-electing Donald Trump, I don't even really have to say anything about why that's a bad idea, but or would electing somebody who's not there mentally be worse? Now, personally, I would say that electing Joe would be better just because eventually, as it became more evident that he was suffering from cognitive decline, his VP would probably take over. Now, who would that be? Who knows? Probably Amy Klobuchar, probably would be his VP, I'd assume. But there is definitely a case to be made for maybe Donald Trump would be better than Joe. Not for moral reasons or substantive reasons or anything like that, but just because Joe is not there. And I have heard talk about, does Trump have dementia? Well, maybe, that's a possibility, but if he does, it's most certainly not as advanced as Joe Biden's is. Joe Biden most certainly has dementia, and I don't understand who is voting for him. Who is voting for a guy that has dementia? He just won my state, right, Tennessee, and I am boggled by that. Like, the fact that I'm surrounded by a ton of people that would vote for somebody who is clearly experiencing cognitive decline. That's just crazy. And my final point is that Joe Biden would lose to Donald Trump epically. Donald Trump would smash Joe Biden, all right, in the debates and in the election. Because Joe Biden doesn't have enthusiastic support, and he clearly has dementia, so he's not going to be able to respond to those attacks as well. See, up to this point, Joe Biden has had the advantage of not really being attacked very much because he was kind of just the default nominee, not nominee, that's not the right word, but the default front runner, I guess you could say, for a long time. But right now, it is just Bernie versus Joe, and it's looking pretty close. And that's sad to see. I mean, do you really want it to come down to a fascist? You have two options: a fascist or somebody with mid-stage dementia. Because I'd say that's about where he's at, is mid-stage. So this is why we have to make the case to Joe Biden supporters, because the truth is, most of Joe Biden's supporters don't really support him necessarily as much as they just think he has the best chance to defeat Donald Trump. But we need to dismantle that argument and show why that is just false. So I usually don't do this, but because it is so urgent, I would like all of my viewers to share this video to get the message around and tell everybody that, point out that Joe Biden is not there. All right, not all there. I shouldn't say he's not there at all, but he's not all there mentally. We have to point that out, and we have to make our case. And if we don't, it will come down to Joe Biden, somebody with dementia, versus a fascist, Donald Trump. And that is an election I do not want to see. At least Hillary Clinton, for all of her faults, and believe me, there were many, she was quick on her feet. She was all there. She was a decent debater, decent enough. But Joe's not anymore. He used to be. In fact, if you go back, you watch him debate Sarah Palin, he destroyed Sarah Palin. But I want you to share this video and and share with your friends and family and whoever else, anybody you can, to expose Joe Biden's incoherency. And that's it. And yeah, it's pretty bad.